Hey guys, this is Chris of the Mind Divided, and I hope this video finds you all doing well, doing whatever it is you may be doing today. I want to talk very briefly about a couple of new developments, and I mentioned one of them on a prior bike slash component review video, and that is the CushCore system. So I've been running the CushCore system for a little over a month now, and I have how about 700 to 750 miles on the CushCore, and this is my second set of tires that I'm running on this. So I think I have enough experience to at least have a tentative appreciation for what this system's all about. So I want to go ahead and just start off talking about what CushCore is. And CushCore is essentially a hardened foam insert that you insert around the tire, not the tire itself, but rather around the inside of the rim, and it acts as a cushion of sorts, and in some sense it even acts as a volume spacer, like a volume spacer would in an air shock or air fork. It does that. So what it does is it takes out some of the volume, and so what you get is you kind of get this interesting compression feeling of the tires. The tire compresses, and then you hit the CushCore and you kind of have some almost like mid-stroke support, so to speak, and it creates kind of a progressive feel to the tire. And so what it allows you to do is it allows you to actually run low pressures, or pressures that you would normally not want to run in a standard size tire. And these are, I'm currently running the Bontrager XR4 29 by 2.4 tires. It's a pretty solid tire, and actually per Kona you're only supposed to go as wide as a 2.4 in the rear. So I normally run 2.6s, but the 2.4s seem to work well on this bike. And so I'm running a little under 20 pounds per square inch. I'm actually running 16 psi in the rear and about 14-15 psi up front. So I'm essentially running pressures that you would only run in a plus size, 2.8 to 3.0 tire, and I'm able to run the lower pressures with lower air volume in this tire, and the CushCore allows me to do that. So when I compress the tire over a rock or terrain, the tire can hit the core insert, and the core insert is a kind of foam, but it's not very squishy. It's a fairly built up foam. It's fairly firm, and so what happens is you push into that foam, and that foam just provides extra support, and it kind of, like I said, it kind of acts like mid-stroke support, and so it kind of works with your suspension. And of course, most importantly, it prevents damage to the rim. You don't bottom out, you don't hit your rim, you don't crack it. It does tend to support the sidewalls a little bit, so you don't get that tacoing that you would normally get on a standard tire. And so it really does work. If you want to run lower pressures, you want to get good traction, you want to prevent or protect your rim, rather, prevent the tacoing of the tires, the CushCore system is wonderful for doing that. I don't have any complaints. It works as advertised. However, there are some caveats to that. The first caveat is the CushCore system does add a fair amount of weight, but if you look at the kind of bike that I'm riding, clearly I'm not somebody who's interested in weight, but that is a consideration. If you are running a light cross-country bike, and you're really concerned about weight, the CushCore system is going to have some significant trade-offs, and there's some some cognitive calculus that you're going to have to work through before you go to the CushCore system. So that's number one. Number two, the CushCore system is fairly expensive. It's about $140 to $150 depending on where you get it. So it costs as much as a good pair of tires. And I believe the company says you can use it up to two tires. So for every 2 tires, you're supposed to change the system. So that's a fairly significant cost if you're like me and you're putting a lot of miles on your bike. I'm actually not going to change the CushCore system after. I'm just going to keep riding it as long as I possibly can to cut down on the cost. And then the third major issue, and possibly the most important if you do your own maintenance, is the fact that it is inherently more difficult to work with. First of all, getting the CushCore system installed can be tough, and then changing tires out can be extraordinarily tough. And in the rare incident that perhaps you do compromise the tire on the trail, which I haven't done. I haven't had any kind of a flat whatsoever so far running the CushCore system, but in the chance that it could happen, and it could, right? It doesn't totally eliminate that need. You're not going to be able to get a tube in here. You're going to have a hard time putting a boot on the tire. You're going to have a real hard time working without removing the CushCore, and then you've got to deal with this wet tire sealant soaked foam core that you're stuffing in your pack or somewhere. So from a logistical and from a mechanical standpoint, it's a lot more work getting tires on when you're using the CushCore system. It takes a lot more time, and it can be a real pain in the ass, frankly. So those are the things you kind of have to weigh. You have to weigh the weight, the cost, and the amount of work it'll take to run a CushCore system. You have to weigh that with the benefits of you can run low pressure and get great traction. You get great support. You decrease tacoing, and you eliminate rim strikes. So, right, you take that and you weigh that against the cons, and whatever kind of falls out of the brain is a final decision. So that's kind of my review on the CushCore system at this point in time. So we'll see how it is for longevity. The next thing I want to talk about is a new handlebar that I put on the bike, and these are actually custom made by a guy in Silver City, New Mexico, a guy by the name of Cjell Monē. You can look them up online if you find this interesting. So these are actually steel. It's a custom-made steel bars, and then he brass welds them and then clear coats the whole setup. So just look at the workmanship that goes into these bars. They're just absolutely beautiful, clear-coated, wonderful color contrast. It's just gorgeous. And so you can actually get this, and I want to say that I am not in any way associated with Cjell Monē, other than I've ridden with him a few times. So this is not an endorsement, and I actually paid money for my own bars, so this is not some sort of deal or anything like that. This is just my honest assessment of these bars. But you can see great workmanship goes into these. They're beautiful. They're a little heavier than your standard bars, indeed, but again, this is what I'm riding, so I'm not really worried about weight, but they're beautiful. And what I really like is this kind of has augmented this bike quite a bit. So these particular bars, the Odd Money, it has about 3.5 inches of rise, right? So it actually lowers the head tube angle just a little bit, or effectively lowers it just a little bit. 810 millimeters wide, nice wide bars, right? And it has a 15-degree sweep. So if I get behind here, nice sweep. So it really helps augment the steering. It's really comfortable for my hands. You know, I'm north of 40 now. So I do sometimes get some hand numbness, and these bars have really helped almost eliminate that. So from an all mountain enduro kind of riding perspective, it actually augments this bike's ability to be even more aggressive than it is, and so it helps take it into more all-mountain enduro kind of territory, and they just look ridiculous. I think the bars themselves, I think you can get them for $180, and then the bar and Thompson stem combination, I think you can get for about $250, which I think is a good deal. This is a high quality stem, and it fits the size of the bars exactly. If you don't go with this stem, then you'll just have to call Cjell and figure out what kind of shim kit you need so your stem will work with these bars. But anyway, I really, really do like them. They're so unique. They add a very unique look to the bike, and they do add functionality, and they make it a little more predictable in its handling. So the addition of these bars has actually this is, I almost pushed this bike into like my go-to rider, and the fact that my rear hub body on my transition broke, and it is warranted, and so that bike's been out of service for a while, so I've been exclusively riding the Kona. But the more I ride it, the more I like it. And just to do a quick follow-up, I did end up having to change out the rear brake. Remember, I was having all the squealing, and so what would happen was the seals had broke. There was a compromised seal in the rear, and it was leaking dot fluid onto the rotors, and that was what was making all the squealing noise. So I went ahead and put just a Shimano Dior brake on, and it works perfectly. So I'm going to keep running the Level T up front, but when it goes out, I'll just put a Dior or an SLX up on the front as well. I did swap out the dropper as well, so I'm now running the Bontrager Trans-X dropper. Cheap, incredibly reliable, and has a great southpaw lever that's nice and comfortable. So I highly recommend it. I really like the Bontrager droppers. And then just to conclude this video, in the upcoming couple of weeks, I have a nice surprise for you guys, and I'll reveal it now, and that is that I will be changing out the rear shock. I have got a coil setup on the way, so I've done something rather interesting. Again, in prior videos, one of my biggest gripes with this bike is that the rear suspension, and I suspect perhaps the shock itself, is way over damped. It's super progressive, and so I have a hard time effectively using all the travel. You can see I'm almost using all the travel here, but I'm running well over 30% sag. So it's not an optimal situation. So I went ahead and did some research, and I'm going with a coil, but I'm doing something a little different. First of all, the specific setup here is a 205 millimeter by 60 millimeter stroke trunnion mount, and with all the new RockShox kit that's coming out, I can't really find currently until I think June. I can't find a coil that will fit this bike, but what I did find was Marzocchi, and of course Marzocchi was bought by Fox, so essentially it's maybe a lower end Fox setup. The Marzocchi Bomber CR sells a shock in the 206 or 205 by 60 millimeters. So what I've done is I've purchased a Marzocchi Bomber CR shock, and then I've purchased a Fox SLS orange spring. So it's a super light steel, I believe it's a super light steel spring that fits the Marzocchi, because essentially Marzocchi's owned by Fox, or they're the parent company, and so there is some interoperability between the different shocks. So I got a really good deal on the shock. Ended up having to pay a little more for the spring, but overall I ended up paying quite a bit less for that setup than, say, Fox DHX, or the new, was it the 6.1 into 6 Plus or Industry, their $1,200 proprietary shock, custom shock that they make. I think I've found a really nice compromise, so I'm going to go ahead and mount that on this bike and see what that does to the aggressiveness of this bike. And more importantly, does it make the suspension more linear, and does it allow me to more effectively use my travel, improve small bump sensitivity, and allow me to really, I think, more effectively use this bike as an all-mountain kind of bike, rather than say a dedicated trail bike at this point. I think that's really going to help me. So we'll see what happens, and so a video when the Marzocchi and the Fox SLS spring come in, I will do a video on that, and then maybe I'll even do a video on me swapping the shocks out. It's actually a fairly straightforward procedure, but I'll do a video anyway, and we'll see how it goes. And I don't know that there are a whole lot of videos out on the Marzocchi Bomber CR, or videos that really talk about it in any specific detail that are in English. So that'll be exciting to be able to add something relevant and pertinent to the World Wide Web. All right, guys, Hopefully you found this video interesting and helpful. And as always, I hope you guys are having a great time doing whatever it is you may be doing. I've got some more riding ahead of me, so I'm having a great one. You guys take care. Bye-bye.